You hit that box on the end. There you go. And
There we go.
your participant list might be on there too.
And the heater's on tonight, so
Yeah.
I like Creighton's shirt. Now, if that was didn't have Creighton, I'm thinking West Point.
Good evening. Tonight at 7 o'clock, we'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the meeting to order. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. We'll begin with roll call.
Six council members are present, Mayor.
Next is Mayor's comments. We have a special presentation this evening. Carter, can you come up here?
Carter, I'd like you to meet Mayor Getchman.
How you doing, buddy?
Good.
Probably shouldn't do that, but this is Carter Paulson. He's 9 years old. He's a fourth grader at Howard Elementary. He enjoys playing in the parks, but recently he really doesn't enjoy seeing the trash that people carelessly leave on the ground in the parks. He decided he wanted to do something about it. So for about the last 8 weeks here in 2020, him and a group of friends and family have been cleaning our parks. On Sunday, August 30th, 2020, there was 17 volunteers that fanned across John C. Fremont Park to participate in what we now call Carter Cares Park Cleanup. The cleanup only lasted about an hour. Everyone had a great time. That's coming from Kim. I was in church, so I wasn't there. But the Fremont Park was the 8th park that Carter and his team has cleaned up and through his organization. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Carter publicly for donating his time, his energy, and everything it takes to make our parks cleaner, more attractive for everyone that uses each and every one of our parks. His dedication is appreciated and it doesn't go unnoticed. I would also like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Carter and everyone who comes out to help Carter clean the parks. Got one more thing. This is from myself and my wife. This is for you. Thank you for your dedication and everything you do to keep our parks clean and make Fremont a better place to live. Thank you. I have my own shirt. So you just got to shoot me an email when you're ready for me to come, okay? All right. Very good. Thank you.
Also, Carter's
Family is here.
include his mom, Kelly, his grandma, Cheryl, his little brother, Leland, and his dad, Josh. So they all just meet in the park and invite people to come on out, and they're zooming everywhere. They were running circles around me, but it was fun. It was a good day. So thanks, Carter. We appreciate
Thank you all. Next item on the agenda is motion to adopt the current agenda for September 8th, 2020, regular meeting. Is there any comments from staff or from council in regards to this item? Any comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Yerger?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Councilmember McLean,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Next item is new business. Item number 2, motion to approve Howard Court subdivision agreement. This time we'll have staff report. So Brian, you taking that?
Yeah, I'll take it. I gotta find it first. We will be paying, there won't be any oversizing of streets. I think the diagram you can see, and Dave, I think it's online, we'll pay a portion of the cul-de-sac. We also pay the intersection, which is on to Morningside. Other than that, the developer pays most of the costs. So I guess there are any questions about the subdivision agreement?
Any questions for staff?
Oh, wait a minute, guess what? No, I was muted.
So everybody heard me in this room except folks online. I just got a text, you're muted. See, Brad, I do it too. So are there any questions? Yeah, I mean, for those on Zoom, this is a standard subdivision agreement we've had, very similar to the other subdivisions that we've done. This is relatively no different. There were a few questions today, Councilman Yerger asked staff, and we got back with the answers.
Councilmember Jacobus.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, good. Just wanted to check, don't want to set the pace for myself. I had a few questions, and you had mentioned if I left for a long list. I see in the plan layout that it also includes within that 25-foot boundary, a 15-foot drainage easement, which that is actually part of it. That whole 25-foot setback, it's included in that 25-foot. So the drainage easement is actually on the western fringe, comes in 15 feet. So that entire 15, and that drainage easement, when it's an easement, which is similar to the north 66-foot utility and drainage easement, and to the east side, which is 33-foot drainage easement. How does that compute as far as maintenance? Who maintains that drainage easement for perpetuity? Because I'm looking at other areas of town that have had some issues of concern that now the city is tasked with maintaining, cleaning out vegetation and other debris from overgrowth in those drainage easements, because the city has rights to that. So I was curious, when it comes to drainage easement, who's responsible for this once this is put in place?
So Dave Godigan, are you, I know you're on, you may have an answer to that, because I'm assuming we don't maintain those easements. How Dave's on, so maybe Dave can answer better than I can. We don't, although you're right. Ultimately, it usually falls back to us. Dave, you have comments?
Dave Godigan, Director of Public Works. I was having a very difficult time.
Just a minute, Dave, start again.
I was having some trouble catching everything Councilman Jacobus said, because there was a lot of background noise. But this is like many subdivisions we have. There are easements as far as like day-to-day maintenance, mowing, et cetera. It falls on the abutting property owner or the property owner that the easement sits on. Things like future maintenance of cleaning it out as far as, if it silts in, I guess that's kind of an open question that could fall on the city because it is a city storm sewer at that point. But typically that just doesn't really happen. We have many of these around town like this, and the city just doesn't do the mowing or anything like that. That's always done by the property owner.
I know there's some issues of concern along between 19th and 20th where you have 30-foot drainage easement in the backyards, and it's difficult to get to. And I see that 66-foot access area to the north may fall into the same problem as far as accessibility. And my other question, along with the drainage issues, that water's going to drain what is now stated in the subdivision plan. It's going to drain to the south, which would be the north side of Morningside Road. Where does the water go after that? Where is it intended to go, I should say? Because there have been some issues of concern raised prior by expanding development area along Morningside, that a lot of that water has sat in and gone into the Deerfield subdivision area. Are there any concerns with this on the additional runoff?
Well, that's part of the reason why we have drainage ways in this subdivision, because it will detain that water. So they are designing some ponding storage into this. And then eventually, as the city owns the property immediately east of this, and there will have to be some detention measures on the city's part as well. So it'll kind of work hand in hand with this subdivision as well with what the city does in the future. So the idea is to slow that water down so that when it runs off, it doesn't inundate the ditch. And to answer to your first question, that ditch flows east down Morningside and then eventually goes underneath the bypass and then off to the Elkhorn River through the drainage ways that are built out in that area.
You had mentioned that the city owns land over to the east. Is that lot 1, 24, or 12? Do we own all the land to the east?
I'm not looking at the plat right now, but we own the land to the east of this that eventually will be where we're looking at developing for our maintenance facility. Yes. I don't know.
So there won't be any other lots that will be privately owned or inaccessible and getting landlocked. We don't need an additional easement because we own all that land along that east side.
Let me see if I can get to that page on the, you got me a little bit at a disadvantage here.
If you're looking at the actual agreement itself, go towards on page 20, where there's a layout and it shows the lots on the east side.
Yeah, I think the main side he owns that stretch right down there off Morningside. Yeah, the front portion.
The very south part.
Yes, very south part. And then we own everything north of that.
Then when Dave's looking at that, it said the city will bear the cost of oversizing streets, of which you had said there was none, and the infrastructure, et cetera. What are the actual physical costs? Because I see in there that there won't be any sewer fees, et cetera, which kind of surprising, since the intent of this property is going to develop into 2 and 3 lots. And in here also stated that the city will construct an electric power system and the developer will pay $700 per single family residence duplex townhome. I don't know how that applies because this isn't a residential area.
Yeah, Troy's not here. I think we charge $750. I think even for those commercial lots, I think I'm pretty sure it's $750. Might even be more.
Then you say it's just misstated in the.
Yeah, I think the email I sent Brad said $750. I think it's still $750.
It's the 6th bullet point down on the front page. It
Number
mentions
6.
residential, not commercial or industrial.
So if you look, I think on number 1, page 12, apportionment of costs, electric power system. So I don't think Troy was correct today when he sent Brad you that 750 per lot, because we are charging the developer $24,500 to run 3-phase underground service into the facility, into the subdivision. They want it underground. Page 12, number 1.
That'd be page 7 of the subdivision agreement itself.
Yep, you're correct.
There's no fees assessed for connection to the city sanitary sewer?
No, because on subdivisions over so many lots, we waive that fee because we're getting plenty of services. So.
So Dave, do you want to come forward or did we answer?
Oh, there's Dave. Oh, you have to turn that podium on, unmute it and turn the video on, would you, in the lower left? Oh, let me look here, Tyler. No, I think I put podium on, didn't I? Oh, yeah, presentation. Yeah, let me find podium. Just a minute. Yep, you're right. You just meant Dave. Okay. All right, did you see the unmute and turn the video on?
There we go. Were there any further questions, I guess?
Just regarding the easements.
Yes, typically on an easement like this, the city does not do the day-to-day maintenance. That's done by the property owner. You referred to the ditch on 19th Street. That one's, I guess, a little bit of a different situation where that's actually a waterway. But this is more of a storm source system, or I guess you could say the retention ponds in that area, and the owners will take care of those, not the city.
There's also the same issue along Luther Road on a wonderful little ditchway there, and lack of cleanout because of the vegetation overgrowth and debris. And there's other areas of town that have similar situations where they're not maintained, but there's nobody pushing that maintenance. So if the homeowner doesn't do it and there's no conveyance of water, or it stops it and slows it, it causes backup and issues and flooding and too much water to stand still, and it takes too long to dissipate. So I guess my concern is not necessarily that there's a drainage easement there, just ultimately who's responsible for that, who chases that down? Because I know some of the city crews have been cleaning up some of those areas that they shouldn't be tagged with cleaning it up.
Well, that does occur, and that's one of the problems with an open ditch. They do have to be maintained, or any kind of open waterway. There is maintenance required, and at the last resort, the city crews do come in and do that. And we do have the ability, or what we can bill them back. I guess bill the property owner for that as well.
I guess my question to you is there any concern that we're going to have any similar issues with this area with private properties to the east and the west, plus a secluded area somewhere along the tracks to the north? And that 66-foot area, that's a utility drainage easement area. I would hate to recreate some of the problem areas we've already got in that area. I mean, Luther Road is a perfect example of lack of maintenance on an open ditch.
Which ditch are you referring to on Luther Road?
Well, along Luther.
North of the power plant, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not too concerned about this one. Mr. Dodd and I did go through this, Steve Dodd, the designer, and he laid out his rationale. And he put those there because we do have drainage problems in that area. And there's a fairly large area that drains into there, but the water quantity isn't a large amount that drains into it. It goes all the way almost over to Old Highway 8, where it's on the side, south side of the railroad tracks. but being undeveloped, the amount of water out there, a lot of that water takes so long to get there anyway. Now, as that develops, we're going to have to address it at each step along the way. But those drainage ways are there as they're drainage ways, but they're also detention cells.
Councilman Yerger.
Just to follow up on a few of the questions that were asked. First of all, I'd like to thank the applicant and the staff for actually following through and putting this on the agenda ahead of the final plat tonight. That's one of the things we've been working towards for some time, so thank you for getting that done. I did send several emails out earlier. I got some back, and I apologize, Dave, I don't have yours with me. I thought I did because you had quite a bit of information in yours, so hopefully you have that as well. The reason for my asking representatives of city staff the questions that I did about what does it cost the city or the city's ratepayers to do the natural gas work, the electrical work, the cul-de-sac, the intersections, half the sign costs, and the ditch work that we have to do with the county, is because we have infrastructure costs obligations as defined in this agreement as being city obligations, and they're upfront obligations relative to the build. The applicant gets benefit of TIF tax relief, that goes on for several years, but the city has to pay for a lot of its costs upfront as this thing starts. And so my expectation was, and I thought what my discussion with Jennifer Dam at the last meeting was, when we saw the development agreement, we would see the fiscal impacts of the city's infrastructure requirements. And a couple of them are spelled out in narrative here and have been, but the ones that were identified in the subdivision agreement as belonging to the city, which I sent emails on today and you responded, there are several thousands of dollars worth of cost that the city is estimated to incur, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And okay, yes, that's correct.
So that being correct, and I didn't add them all up, but there are tens of thousands of dollars there that I thought ought to be reflected in the fiscal impact statement because they are estimated as belonging to the city. And that would be disclosure to the council and disclosure to the public that it doesn't come free. We have upfront costs. So that was my expectation. It didn't get changed in the staff report. I wish that it would have. I'd put all the documents that I received into the record here, but I don't have yours, unfortunately, so I guess I won't do that. I was curious also as to the question that was asked on fees and the response that was given as to, well, this is another one of these 4-lot exemption waivers, et cetera. My recollection of when we went through that policy was that that was a 4-lot exemption for residential subdivisions.
Yeah.
No, it applies to any subdivision regardless.
Are you confident that's the language as written? Would it apply to anything? But my recollection is different.
Yeah, I'll have to have Troy take a look at it, but yeah, I think so.
Okay. I have a question that deals with paragraphs R and T on page 14 of the subdivision agreement in particular, and so maybe it's the developer that needs to address this. I'm not sure, but
14 of the
it's on
subdivision
page
agreement.
14, at least it's numbered on the subdivision agreement. I'm not sure what it is in the packet. It's item R and item T.
19.
Item R says there's no obligation to construct.
Right.
And item T says the developer has a responsibility to construct within 4 years. And so I'm wondering, how do those two paragraphs correlate with each other if they're intended to?
So once they get started, they have 4 years to get it done, but if they don't, and they can get an extension if the county engineer or city engineer approves it. But again, if they financially can't do it, they don't get started, then it just sits, nothing happens. They're not obligated to build it.
You don't see those two paragraphs as being conflictory. One says you're not obligated to do anything, and then item T says you are obligated.
We'll let legal take that.
The paragraphs don't conflict with each other. Paragraph R is specifically just referencing that the agreement in and of itself does not create an obligation. That obligation being a legal term of art.
So paragraph 1 says commence construction. And paragraph 2 says you have a responsibility to construct in 4 years. That's why I'm in trouble.
There is no obligation under the subdivision agreement imposed upon the developer. Obligation being a term of art that is an actual duty upon the developer. Section T just says if they would like to pursue developing under this development agreement, they must begin within 4 years.
Okay, my last question had to do with the buffer yard on the east side of the property, which looks like in the end might become the obligation of whoever buys the last 2 lots on the southeast side, because it could be conveyed to the purchaser of those lots rather than the developer. And it may not be built at all because the anticipation is that that property may not be residential property in the future, therefore no buffer yard required. Is that the expectation? But if that building still stands there, someone's going to be able to get a buffer yard, right? I don't have a specific paragraph. I just know that in this document, it says that there's a west buffer yard to be built potentially. And that was what Councilmember Jacobus was talking about. And then there's also discussion about an east buffer yard. And the discussion in the document is that would be on the 2 southernmost lots on the east side. Which are up adjacent to that residential property. And that those wouldn't be built immediately. They may not be built at all if that property doesn't stay residential dwelling, as how I read the agreement. And if it does stay residential dwelling, then the obligation to put buffer yard in there would be to those that buy the lots, not the developer. I just want to be clear that that's the way I read it.
You're correct in your interpretation.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Any comments from the public?
Start video. There. There it goes. There it goes.
Good evening. My name is Heather Carver. Can you hear me okay? I am louder. Thank you. I'm told that I don't speak loud enough often. We represent the redeveloper, Arnie Leasing, on the subdivision agreement. I won't walk through all of the provisions of the subdivision agreement since we've had a fair opportunity to discuss it at this point, but the subdivision agreement as a whole allocates and defines the responsibilities of the redeveloper in the city for installation of infrastructure in the redevelopment area. The city has agreed to pay for the oversizing of streets and public improvements, including the cul-de-sac, the excess pavement in the cul-de-sac and the return on the intersection. That's shown on Exhibit C. The developer otherwise is paying for all of the costs of paving and construction of the streets. As you mentioned, the electric power system will come at a cost of $24,500 to the redeveloper. That is stated in the subdivision agreement, but I think there was an error in the, just a typo in the staff report relating to residential or multifamily uses, I think. But that $24,500 is the cost for the underground 3-phase power for industrial use. The cost of the public street lighting will be reimbursed to the city by the redeveloper. The developer will also construct and pay for the cost of the water distribution system, and the city will construct and pay for the natural gas system. Again, the developer will construct and install the fire hydrants. And with respect to your question regarding the buffer yard, yes, there is the buffer yard on the east side that is only, I don't recall exactly how many feet, but only covers the location of the adjacent house. The house that's located there is a non-conforming use at this point. That's actually zoned for industrial use. So if that house would become abandoned, from what I understand, it's not in great shape at this point. So if it would become abandoned or be sold and no longer be used for residential use, there would be no requirement under your UDC to construct a buffer yard if it was going to be used for future industrial use. So that's the reason for that language in paragraph 10. As we discussed when we went through the taxing rent financing redevelopment process, this project is going to be built out over a period of years, depending on market demand for these lots. And so it really doesn't make sense to require a buffer yard there if, say, it's 3 years from now and there's no longer a house there, but someone's come in and built something industrial on the lot that's consistent with the future use and the comprehensive plan. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Councilman, you're
Just one question with regards to the cul-de-sac. The reason I brought that up was not only is that a city expense, I believe by state law, I didn't find it mentioned other than in the drawings that were appended to the package. And I guess I thought the subdivision agreement probably should have spelled that out, just like it does gas, electrical, intersections, street signs, et cetera, as being a cost that accrues to the city. But I didn't find that in the narrative, only in the pictures. And I guess I'd ask legal counsel why that didn't occur on the city side as being an obligation of the city. I think it's state law.
Still looking through it here to see if there's specifically provision for that in the agreement.
I didn't find it, but last time we discussed subdivision agreements, I think we included that reference, and I was surprised since this is kind of standard boilerplate at this juncture, we haven't fixed that going forward to have it.
The reference that they shall comply with state statutes. There's not really a requirement to specifically add the language in the agreement.
Paragraph 7 does talk about dedicated street signage. Should be on page 8, the very bottom. And then it goes to page 9.
So if I can I jump in?
Go ahead.
Paragraph 5 on 8 is where we reference Exhibit C. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to. The city in preparing your subdivision agreement, the city prepared the Exhibit C showing the amount of the concrete that would be reimbursed for the city. And my understanding was that the city's past practice was to identify the amount of the concrete that would be reimbursed. And then it would be reimbursed in accordance with the construction costs after the street was constructed.
And the cul-de-sac is referenced as Exhibit C.
Yeah.
If I may, Dave Godican, Director of Public Works. What we do when we produce that drawing, you go half of the width of the street is accessible to each side of the street. And then we talk about intersections, and in my mind, a cul-de-sac falls under extra width pavement because it's wider than, let's say in this case, 28 feet. So we took the cul-de-sac bulb and then drew a parallel line, 14 feet in this case, around the perimeter of the cul-de-sac. And then that little bubble or island on the inside is what we're saying would be accessible to the city, or they would be able to charge back to the city. As we move forward, we maybe could do a better job of verbalizing that in the agreements. And I know we're going to be working soon on updates to the UIB, and that's perhaps something that could be put in there.
Councilman Ligman, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, I just have one question. This is a standard agreement between city and developers. As far as you know, is this pretty standard? Is this a pretty standard agreement between Fremont and your company? Is it in other cities? Is this pretty standard agreement?
I don't know that I've seen a standard subdivision agreement, if that makes sense. Just because it has to be tied to your development code, it has to be tied to the particular development and what's being constructed. But yes, I mean, it covers broadly the same general responsibilities and allocation of costs for infrastructure that a subdivision agreement would. But I don't want to say standard just because from community to community, there's of course going to be some variance. But yes, I do think that it covers the broad responsibilities that subdivision agreement is intended to cover.
Perfect, thank you.
Councilman, you're.
Not to belabor the point on the cul-de-sacs, and thank you for pointing out that and for Dave's discussion about the extra pavement explanation relative to cul-de-sacs. I just didn't see that being defined that way in the review of state law. It just says cul-de-sacs the responsibility of the city. And I guess I would have expected the developer to want that very clear. I guess I'd like to see it clear. So I agree with Dave. It's something that we can clean up. At least it's in here. At least it is referenced in the charts. And in the future, maybe we can do a better job of explaining that so that we're in compliance with state law. More specifically as to language. If half the concrete or the additional extra pavement is the state definition as well, that's great. If it's not, we need to clean that up and make sure that we just spell out what the city's doing to cul-de-sac. At any rate, I don't have any other issues with this. I just thank you for your answers.
Any other comments from the public?
Thank you.
Comments from council? Councilman, you're.
I make a motion to approve the Howard Court subdivision agreement.
Second, Councilmember Jacobus.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
next item is public hearing. Resolution 2020-168 of the City Council of the City of Fremont, Nebraska to approve the Howard Court final plat on property legally described as Lot 3 Morningside Industrial Park. This time we'll have staff report.
This is the final thing you approved, the preliminary plat 2 meetings ago, and we held this over for the subdivision agreement. So I don't think anything.
Brian, are you muted or you show you're muted?
Yeah.
Trying to juggle too many things here. So this is a carryover from the preliminary plat that you considered a couple of months ago. This is the final plat. Nothing has changed. Jennifer had no additional comments on the staff report, so try to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for staff? Councilman Muir.
I don't have any questions. I have a recommendation to amend the resolution language for council consideration. It states in the therefore it to be resolved statement of the resolution, subject to the approval of a subdivision agreement, which we've already done in the last item. I would suggest that the resolution should read as conditioned in the approved subdivision agreement. We're in the habit of doing subdivision agreements before final plat. That's the language that we would want to incorporate, I think, not the subject to the approval we've been doing. The subdivision agreements have been after the fact.
That's fine.
Is there a second? Councilmember Jacobus.
A second is motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Now we'll open the public hearing of the amended resolution 2020-168 of the City Council of City of Fremont. Is there any comments from the public?
Thank you. Heather Carver with Klein Williams, Wright Johnson and Oldfather. As I stated previously, we represent the redeveloper RD Leasing. The Planning Commission unanimously approved the, you guys took a look at this, the preliminary plat last week, and you unanimously approved the preliminary plat, I believe. And the City Council determined to hold over this, the final plat until consideration of the subdivision agreement this week. I don't have much to add. I just would note that this is the final step in the process toward development of this parcel after the redevelopment process approving tax increment financing. This is a commercial and industrial park, more or less, that will consist of up to 16 commercial and industrial flex buildings. As stated in the staff report, this property is bounded generally by general industrial and light industrial districts, with some urban residential and rural. The proposed use of the site is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which designates the site for industrial use, and the cul-de-sac is consistent with your UDC, which permits cul-de-sacs that serve no more than 20 lots or are less than 600 feet in length, whichever is shorter, and this complies with that requirement. The UDC does not require more than one access point, and as requested by the council, there was a trip generation study performed that showed that this would have significantly fewer traffic trips than the adjacent residential neighborhood. The redeveloper anticipates for the first site developed, there should be only one trailer that will go out about once daily, there and back daily, and the side dumps operated as part of that first business will only be in and out 2 or 3 times per week. the lot sizes exceed the minimum lot sizes in the light industrial zoning district, excuse me. And as we discussed with the subdivision agreement, the 25 foot buffer yard will be constructed on the west side, with a shorter buffer yard of 25 feet along the east side, assuming that the adjacent house is still used for residential use. Although the fiscal impact, although fiscally the tax increment will be used for the redevelopment of the parcel up front, as we discussed at the redevelopment stage, the tax increment financing stage, we anticipate that it's possible that these lots, if they sell at the rate that we are hoping and expect them to, that there may be some of the lots that aren't subject to TIF, or that the tax increment financing notes issued as part of the project will pay off sooner than anticipated, so that the city could see some of that tax revenue back into the general fund sooner than anticipated. That's the hope and the expectation based on market demand. Happy to answer questions if you have any.
Any other public comment? We'll close the public hearing. Any comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
This question actually was for you, but I probably couldn't get to you before you left the podium. Kind of goes along, I think, with a question that maybe Councilmember Jacobus asked earlier about the 28 foot wide streets and the city's obligation to construct or pay for wider streets. So the question that I wanted to follow up with is the type of truck traffic that's expected for any of these 16 lots that will be occupied in the future. Is a 28 foot street with a cul-de-sac going to provide adequate turnaround space for the type of truck traffic that's anticipated there? That is, these are going to be smaller trucks, or no, they're going to be loaded semis of full length, and is 28 feet with a cul-de-sac adequate space for those vehicles to turn around? It would be good to know that beforehand rather than after. Do you have an idea as to the size of trucks that will be in this area?
I don't know the size of it.
I do not know the length of the truck specifically, but I do know that the engineer had looked into that as a part of the design and was confident that the width of the streets was sufficient for the proposed uses.
Any other comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to the amended resolution 2020-168 of the City Council, City of Fremont, Nebraska, to approve Howard Court final plat. Councilman Langman.
I make a motion to approve. Oh, no, I lost it.
Amended resolution.
Okay. Make a motion to approve amended resolution 2020-168.
Councilmember McLean,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
The next item is the consent agenda, items 4 through 11. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council, will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Is there any items to be removed from the consent agenda at this time? Councilmember Jacobus.
Am I unmuted? Okay, just checking. I wanted to have removed number 7, number 8, and number 9.
Councilmember Ellis, 11, I assume you're abstaining?
Yep,
Is
that's
that it?
correct. That's correct.
Okay. Any other items? I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda items 4, 5, 6, and 10. Councilmember McLean,
Make a motion to approve consent agenda items 4, 5, 6, and 10.
Councilmember Lakeman,
I second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 7, motion to authorize construction on an activity shed in Clemens Park for community use. I would imagine that's Kim.
Unmute. Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Kim Koski, Director of Parks and Recreation. You have before you a request to construct an activity shed in Clemens Park. This was brought to us from Mr. Dennis Grace. He saw something like this when he was on vacation and thought, hey, this would be great to do in Clemens Park. And we talked to Travis and he didn't see any issues after researching it other than putting up signage about items can't leave the premise, pets can't use them, and put them back when you're finished. And the city is not liable for any injury when they're using them. Park Board heard Mr. Grace's presentation August 3rd and approved 4-0 to bring it to the council for final approval. And one of the coolest things about this project is the young man that you met about an hour ago is who Mr. Grace would like to name the shed after, Carter Cares Playground Shed. So in your backup, you have the initial letter, the cost estimates, as well as a picture of what the shed looked like in South Dakota, and it would look something like that. So if you have any questions, I'm here, or Mr. Grace would be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Councilmember Jacobus.
I had this removed because I thought it was a great idea. I loved it when I read through it. I'm not familiar with it in another area, but I know what some of the Leavable Take-A-Book has done in different neighborhoods. And I think since this is a well-known park and it's large, I think it'd be a perfect fit. So I appreciate Mr. Dennis Grace bringing it to it and yourself on the park board. So I just wanted to bring a little public attention to it and support. I could see this taking off and maybe applying to other parks as well throughout the community, some of the large parks. I just think it'd be a great fit, so I appreciate it a lot. So thank you both for following through and doing this, and hopefully you can find a lot of public support and some monetary support as well.
We hope so.
Councilmember Bechtel.
Yes, I also just wanted to say that I think this is a fun idea. I travel all over the state for work, and I've started to notice sheds like these popping up in communities of all sizes. So I've talked about myself, I don't know has a Fremont, and then forget about it. So I'm glad that somebody is more active in that thought process and that community. So thank you.
And all the credit goes to Mr. Grace. He brought it to us. We thought it was a great idea and are presenting it to you tonight for approval, hopefully.
Any questions, other questions for staff?
Anything you'd like to add? Nope, okay.
Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to the authorization of construction and activity shed in Clemens Park. Councilmember Jacobus,
I'd make a motion to approve.
Councilmember Lakeman,
And I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, Resolution 2020-185, authorize staff to execute a contract with JEO Consulting for the design of and engineering services for the permanent repairs to Fremont farmland and area road levy.
Mayor, City Council, Lottie Mitchell, Grant Coordinator. Our levy project is moving along. As you know, we became owners of the levy shortly after the flooding in 2019. Moving forward on two fronts, rehabilitation and permanent repairs. The permanent repairs process is taking a little longer as that is moving through the FEMA channels. It took a while to get all of the documents in order, but they have obligated our project, which means they will reimburse us 75% of the project costs to make those permanent repairs. The permanent repairs include taking out the temporary fill material, excavating below the surface, and replacing with a qualified levee material. That cost estimate is $507,000. JEO had given us that preliminary number and FEMA agreed. But what you're considering this evening is the design of those permanent repairs, the specifications that a contractor will work from. That is the agreement with JEO Consulting is $79,400. That cost will be reimbursed 100% by our Community Development Block Grant 19EM002. So for this item, the engineering services for the design of the permanent repairs is a no cost to the city. And that's what we're considering this evening.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Jacobus.
My question, is this the area that we had surveyed, because we paid for survey costs before, and also we had had tree removal done in a bidding process. So is that separate out of the 79,000?
Right. The tree removal process was part of their rehabilitation side of the levy project. And that was out of the same community development block grant,
Yes.
but funds remained from that. There was a total of $450,000. The tree removal project was bid at $233,250 or something around in that range. So there are dollars left over to cover the engineering costs for this portion.
I just wondered how it all tied in, because we had to do one to do the other. And then some of the repairs we did, which were good repairs because we used substantial material as needed.
Yes.
So I was just wanting that explained just a little bit about how that tied together.
And we will do soil samples of the material that is there. If it is deemed qualified, it will stay. But we have to test that, and that's part of the engineering and design.
So those tests will be included in this.
Correct.
Overall 79,000, correct?
Yes.
It's not an additional fee for additional service.
We are not anticipating that to be additional. It should be included in this.
Thank you.
Yep.
And again, thank you for your work on the grants. You've been very vital in us attaining those funds, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Yerger.
I have only one question, has to do with the language that's on the resolution and a discussion item that was in your staff report. They go together. It says in the resolution that JEO Consulting was determined to be the most qualified bidding, or the most qualified firm. My understanding of the staff report was they were the only bidder. And if they were the only bidder, how do we make a determination that they're the most qualified firm? I guess I'm quibbling over the language, but since we only had a single bidder, I don't know how we qualify them as being the most qualified rather than something else that's more descriptive of we had a single bid and was adequate or whatever was necessary. So I'm wondering if there's any legal concern relative to one bidder being declared the most qualified.
We would prefer language such as qualified or even most responsible bidder in the resolution. Whether you prefer one or the other is of no consequence, but that the language should be in the resolution.
So if we'd have said they are a qualified firm, that would have been adequate. Asserting them to be the most qualified, since no one else was bidding, we had no comparables.
I suppose if that's a technical change we want to make, as long as it alludes to the fact that they were the most responsible bidder or are a responsible bidder, period, and qualified, no suffices for responsible.
Well, Well, if you're trying to change it to your language, it says we're determined to be a responsible bidder. I'm fine with that language too. I just don't know how we make the quantum leap to most qualified when we didn't have anybody to compare them to.
The one thing I would say, although the public doesn't know this, they've been involved with this project from the instant of the flood in 2019. From the instant this happened, they were by our side, working through the process with the Farmland Levy Railroad, working through the conversations we had having to repair temporarily. They were involved in those conversations. So I look at that as qualified, but I've been involved with it from the beginning as well. So I can see it as qualified, but whether the public or the rest of the council sees it that way, so I look at it two ways. Number one, when you're the only bidder and the only one that's been involved with it from day one, you can have an advantage in the fact that some bidders won't even bid because they feel they have no chance whatsoever because of the fact that there's too much work to get caught up versus this engineer already has all the background, has all the information, and his cost can be the lowest and most responsible. So again, just some clarification there. They've been involved with us from the beginning, and I think that's a lot where the qualification comes from.
And also with community development block grants, it is a requirement to base professional services on qualifications and not price. And so the language of qualification has made its way to the resolution.
I like that. So my suggestion is we would just exchange the most with a. So I would read JO Consulting was determined to be a qualified firm. And then make that amendment.
Travis, is that okay?
Specifically, the grant requires it
To be
the most, is that the language?
to be based on qualifications.
I would leave it the way it is, honestly.
Where it could cause us problems in the future is the resolution does not say only one bid or one request for qualification was received. The resolution is the portion we submit with our grants. So if they say they're returned to be a qualified firm, I mean, obviously they are the most qualified firm as we are planning to award the contract to them. It's what we've used in our past resolutions.
Yeah, I'd recommend keeping it the way it is.
Councilmember Jacobus?
I would have to echo some of what the mayor has said, working with JEO and other levies in another community. They're very versed in what they do. They have a large staff, which has worked well with CORE as well as with FEMA, and they have been involved with the city of Fremont for a long time. This is their area of expertise. So I take no issue whether we had 5 bids or not. JEO is very qualified. They're versed in floodplain management as well as development of levees and working with the Corps and making sure that it meets the standards. So I'm comfortable with it the way it says.
Councilmember Legman?
I'm going to have to agree with Ms. Jacobus that I think it feels fine, and that's the way it is. It's written. We don't need to change it. We don't need to nitpick little words here and there. Let's leave it and move on.
Any other questions for staff? Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution 2020-185. Councilmember Jacobus?
I make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-185.
Councilmember Legman?
And I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 9, Resolution 2020-186, to authorize staff to execute a contract with JEO Consulting for the design of and engineering services for extending the Fremont Farmland Railroad levee. At this time, we'll have staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Lottie Mitchell, Grant Coordinator. This is another phase of the same levee project. This is for the design of an extension to the levee. Currently, the levee ends between Military Avenue and South Street, kind of just tapers off. We would like to have that looked at, studied, determine if an extension would be beneficial to providing additional flood protection. The fees for these services would also be covered by Community Development Block Grant 19EM002. So there is no cost to the city to do this. The cost for this contract is $85,200. But we feel it would be beneficial to have this looked at. If determined beneficial for flood protection, have that designed. We will then have the specs to have it built, as well as an engineer's cost estimate so that we can seek future funding, as we do not currently have funding for the construction of an extension. But we will have something on the shelf ready to go for when we do identify that funding source.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Jacobus?
Are there any land costs involved? The city on all of the land that's involved in this additional extension of the levee?
The city does not own all of the land that's required for an extension. We have had conversations with the property owners on both sides and to the north. Depending on where the levee lands, the extension lands, there could be a land swap possibility, or we may have to procure some of the property. But all landowners are in agreement that if this provides benefit to the city, they are willing to work with the city to accomplish that.
How many landowners are we looking at in this area?
2.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Comments from the public? Comments from council? Councilman Yerger?
I'll only state for the record, I have the same problem as I had on the last resolution with regards to the language describing JEO as being the most qualified and the single bidder, but I will yield to the will of council and compromise, and so I won't oppose this.
Any other comments from council? Councilmember Jacobus?
And just to clarify, this is only to do the engineering and to find out and determine if this is going to be of benefit in a specific area. Am I muted? I was doing so good. Now am I okay?
Yep.
Okay. What I had stated was, sorry, my apologies. I was trying to be good this meeting. This is only for the engineering to determine if this is what's best in this additional extension is appropriate in this specific area, which will get us the most protection for the city, correct? This isn't the green light to go ahead and do it at any cost. This is merely for engineering determination and how much property has to be bought. I mean, this is entailed in that $85,000 price tag.
Determine if it's feasible, if it provides benefit, if it does move forward with the design.
There's a lot of
It's to determine if it's feasible, does it provide benefit to the community for flood protection? If it does, design it. So we have specifications ready to go out for bid, but that's where this stops. We have to identify funding to do the construction of an extension and to procure property if needed. Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what Mr. Newton's addition was.
Construction costs are not included in this. We will come back if we go out for bid and have a funding source identified.
This is just basically identifying the feasibilities.
And design of an extension. This will also help with future grant applications to say we have this ready to go, apply for future funding, and we can roll once awarded.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to this item, resolution 2020-186. Councilmember Jacobus, you're still on.
I make a motion to approve 2020-186.
Councilmember Laydan,
And I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 11, it's a Councilmember Ellis item. It's resolution 2020-188, approving the request of Fremont Downtown Development Group to close a city parking lot and 2 streets for historic downtown Fremont Fall Festival, September 25th, 26th, and 27th. Anything you want to add on that, Glenn? Any comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution 2020-188 with Councilmember Ellis abstaining. Councilmember Jacobus,
I make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-188.
Councilmember Yurger,
Second the motion.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 5-0, 1 abstention, Mayor.
Next item is unfinished business. Item 12. Ordinance 5541 to revise government salary plan. This would be for the final reading. This time we have staff report.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, Jennifer McDuffie, Human Resources Director. This, as the mayor said, this would be the final reading of the government salary ordinance. As we've discussed before, IAFF and AFSCME contracts provide for 2.5% increase. FOP contract provides for 3.5% increase, and staff is recommending a 2.5% increase for all other non-union city classifications and pay grades. I am happy to take any questions that anybody may have at this point.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Jacobus.
Where are we at in regards to comparison studies for pay grades 30 and above? Or
It
excuse me,
is-
below the grade 30 as requested in 2018 and 19. Have you had any progress? Have you contacted any communities?
As I mentioned in the last 2 meetings, we are doing a salary comparison array for all non-union classifications. We have contracted that out. It is in progress. We do not have a final report back yet, though.
Councilman Yurger.
Jennifer, I had posed several questions to you earlier on this particular agenda item, and I didn't check my email before coming back, but you indicated you might not have information for me. Was there information returned, or do I need to ask some questions now?
No, I don't have that information. Some of that information is provided by payroll. And so I don't have that information. I don't have everything gathered together for you yet.
Okay. Here's in essence what I was asking and why I was asking for purposes of the other council members. I wanted to know the approximate number of total employees on the city side, because that's what this one deals with. I wanted to know how many of those city side employees are fire and police employees under the contracts. And then I wanted to know how many of the total city side employees are non-union classifications and pay grades. The reason for asking that information is to help assess whether or not the tail is wagging the dog here. We have an obligation to deal with the contracts that we've already agreed to. And so I don't have any issues with our processing through the contractual increases that the city has already negotiated. But to the extent that the non-union side is a larger contingency and creates a greater expense to the city in application, assuming, let's just say, 20% of the employee base on the city side was law enforcement and fire. That means 80% is being driven with this expense increase by non-union, and we haven't even discussed it. Even though at the last couple of meetings, we suggested that we should break off the non-union side and discuss those separately. Not that there wouldn't be a change or a COLA, but nevertheless, contractual requirements versus non-contractual requirements would be different. And if in fact, the largest percentage of cost, I think that directs us to making these separate resolution discussions in the future. I had hoped that we would be doing it at this particular point so that we would be able to tell the ratepayers how we're spending and increasing the money. One of the concerns that I had early on was when the finance director said we might be revenue short because of COVID. I know her estimates changed somewhat, but what if they had not? What if we were revenue short this year and we were doing increases in salary costs that were not contractual? Is that a good business decision for this council to not at least have discussion about whether or not we wanted to do it or not? If it's the lion's share of the expense that will hit our budgetary requirements. So it's unfortunate we don't have the statistics to go with that, so I have to speculate. But I wish we had segregated these so that we weren't all doing them together. We'd have been doing the contract ones in one resolution and the non-contract in another resolution. They may have both ended up the same way, but it would have been nice to have them separated.
Councilman Layman?
Yeah, I just want to add in there that the budget's already been set. We're talking about doing things, making changes to the budget, but the budget's already been set. It's been a difficult year with COVID. I realize this, and Jennifer just really pretty much has started. Let's let HR do their job. Let them figure out, let the staff figure out where we're at. I think we need to stop trying to micromanage every little thing in the city and let the staff do their job.
Yes, I'd just like to clarify a thing because this is third reading. We've had a lot of discussion. We've had various amendments proposed to try to pull certain groups out or take certain positions out. We've already, all of the contracts are approved. Those increases are already approved. Those are done. These are only the increases for the non-union employees in the city, so those who are not represented by a union. So what we're basically saying is we're going to give you basically the same increase as the employees represented in the union. I don't believe in holding up an increase for 40 employees on the city side and 40, or I think it's 80 total maybe between the two resolutions.
Correct.
Or 80 on each side, sorry.
No,
So
it's 40
we're
on
going
each
to
side.
say, we're going to pick out you 80 employees, and because you have the misfortune not to be represented by the union, you don't get an increase. I think we really need to move forward with this. We're on third reading, obviously with 6 people here tonight. I think this is important. It's important for the morale of the city workers. And we're going to get the study, maybe not as fast as we hoped or wanted. I think Jennifer's heard the message loud and clear. We're going to get all these exempt positions brought back on an array study. But I just really encourage us to go ahead and approve this. If this fails, we're back to square one. These people will have increases held up because we will be basically starting from scratch all over. And I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's the message that we want to send to those 80 employees on the city side in the midst of everything else that's going on right now. And as Councilmember Legman mentioned, these are budgeted increases. Thank you.
I can clarify, Councilman Yerger, just to answer part of your question, is that the employee population is predominantly belongs to one union or another. I believe there are only 40 on each side, so that's 80 total organization-wide out of approximately 300 roughly employees. So the majority is are members of the unions. So
Keep the echo down. Again, as I said earlier, there's 146 utility employees, plus or minus 2 or 3. There's 146 city employees, plus or minus 2 or 3. It doesn't include part-time. There's about 40 that are non-union on each side. We're talking a 2.5% increase, which is really the cost of living. We are in good shape this year. Very blessed with the strong sales tax numbers and very blessed with a strong valuation. And so we need to take care of our employees, because there have been years, and we've had to make a difficult decision of no increases, and that has happened. But this is a year that we probably need to do that. So with that, Councilman Legman.
I don't see anybody else talking, so I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 5541.
Let's get back to, just need to have comments from the public. If there's any comments from the public, then I'll come back. Comments from council. Brad, you're on one. I don't know if you're not on the other. Is your hand up? Okay. Councilman Legman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 5541.
Let's make that motion to hold final reading. Councilmember McLean.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We'll now have third and final reading.
An ordinance of the City of Fremont.
Yeah, you don't want to read that again.
An ordinance of the City of Fremont, Nebraska pertaining to pay plan for officers and employees, repealing ordinance number 5533 and all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict with providing effective date.
Ready? Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 13. Ordinance Ordinance 5542 to revise utility salary plan. This time we'll have staff report.
Mayor and City Council, Jennifer McDuffie, Director of Human Resources. This is the utility salary ordinance. Again, IBEW contract approved, provided for a 2.5% increase, and staff is recommending a 2.5% increase for all non-union utility classifications and pay grades. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions for Jennifer? Any questions for Jennifer? Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion to hold final reading of ordinance 5542. Councilman Langman?
Make a motion to hold final reading of ordinance 5542.
Is there a second? Councilmember McLean?
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We'll now have third and final reading.
An ordinance of the City of Fremont, Nebraska pertaining to pay plan for officers and employees, repealing ordinance number 5501 and all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for publication in pamphlet form and providing an effective date on final reading.
Ready?
Yes.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Who made the motion on that one? While we're at it. Councilman Langman?
Okay, thank you.
Moving to new business. Yeah, if we need to do that. Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll resume with new business.
I forgot to print out physical copies of those ordinances I was reading, so I was trying to, but when I clicked on ordinance, then it would take me off of the Zoom. And then so I couldn't be on Zoom and look at that text at the same time.
Mute.
if you're unmuted.
Right there. So I unmute. Now I flip over to this and come back. Still on mute.
But when you use the space.
Time is 8:38. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Next session is new business, requires individual associated action. First item is 14, receive animal control citizen advisory board monthly report. This time we'll take the monthly report.
Thank you. Sean Shanahan, 650 East Linden Avenue. Rexy Kretzel, 2821 South County Road 26. And I ask that a report to be distributed and placed in public record.
Just bring it up.
Okay.
So I would take a motion to receive. Councilman Legman.
Make a motion to receive.
Is there a second? Councilmember McLean.
I will second that.
Thank you.
Cast your votes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Motion carries 6-0.
perfect. Are we still unmuted?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for accepting the report. Gwen, who is also the other executive member, is on via Zoom. Wanted to just provide you, as you had approved at the last month, an opportunity to have a report. Wanted to let you know that after the meeting, we had made it clear at the meeting that we weren't meeting again until September 16th. So on August 31st, the executive team met and prepared a draft report that is attached as page 2. At that time, there also was then an email, which is your attachment number 1, that was sent out September 3rd to the entire committee, asking for the opportunity for feedback, if there's any disagreements or opportunity to report back on that. Then also Gwen, Roxy, and myself had email extensions and back and forth this morning that none of us had heard feedback from any of the other members. So we have submitted the report for you to give you an update. The other piece of information you will find attached to your report is a letter that we sent to the Humane Society on July 17th. And then also a letter that came to us from Sidner Law indicating that we would be receiving that information as well, even though the date had passed. So I wanted the opportunity to share that with you. Also, you'll find on the email on September 3rd that we encouraged all of the members to go on and listen to the conversations that were happening at 6:30, as well as the city council meeting, because it was some great information in that meeting about the fact that even though you gave a year, you would like us to wrap it up as soon as possible. Also, it was great clarification of our role and to stay focused on the contract. And so we appreciated all of that as well. You will find that on our next agenda, we will be appointing or asking for a member to take on this role and responsibility so that you will get an updated monthly report.
Is there any questions? Councilman Yerger?
Thank you for coming tonight and for bringing information to the council. One of the things that I guess I, as a council member, felt we needed to start receiving on a regular basis to know more specifically what's going on. And in particular, I'm interested in several things this evening as a part of that understanding. One of the things that I'm concerned about is the amount of time that's lapsed. And I'm interested in knowing and hearing from you whether or not the materials that you asked for at the beginning meeting that you had, whether that material has been provided to you in a timely fashion from the city attorney, Dodge County Humane Society, in order for you to complete your work. That would be important understanding, I think, for everybody in the room. I'm also interested in knowing whether or not, because it's my position that we appointed 8 board members to serve on this board. It's my belief they're all equal. They all have a voice. They have an equal voice. If there are others here tonight that have additional information that they'd like to share with the city council, I encourage them to do so this evening because I want to be as fully informed as possible. And if they have corroborating opinion or dissenting opinion, it would be good for us to understand what that is. I am concerned after looking at, and I've sat in on a lot of these meetings just to listen. I haven't participated, I've just listened. But the contract seems to be fairly clear in many respects and as to what's required. In essence, paragraph 16 of the code says, of the contract says, and shall be required to. And there's items listed there A through H. And I'm wondering whether or not you specifically investigated each and every one of those shall requirements up to this point, and whether information has been made available to you to do that. So your report is somewhat brief. I am concerned from looking at the contract on my own. The expectation is that there is much to investigate here. Not everything has to be investigated. So I'm curious as to your breaking up into various subcommittees. I'm not sure that all of council is aware of that. There's a couple of committees that were established specifically and tasked to look into different things. Maybe you can elaborate some on that, or others in the room can do the same.
I'm going to hopefully answer all of your questions or at least direct them to our next board meeting as I heard them. So subcommittees, we have 2 subcommittees that the group voted to move forward on. One was to look at just the contracts. The other one was to look at emails, investigations, and concerns. The contract committee has met 2 times and will be submitting a report at the next meeting on which contract line items need further review and or are no findings, and could that one number or letter could be closed. But I couldn't bring that report to you without it going through the proper channels first. So more to come on that from that subcommittee, as well as there's a leader of that subcommittee that needs to actually review and present that report. So that would not have been fair for me to bring that here before that went through its entire process. The first question was, have we received everything that was asked for? So as you can tell, we submitted the letter to you that we asked for the Humane Society. So a batch of our first request to the Humane Society, and that was answered. Then we put stuff into a formal letter that has not been answered yet, but then a letter from the attorney that it would be coming. So I don't want to make any assumptions on anyone's role of if that is or isn't coming at this date today. The city, all of the city documents have been submitted and returned to us as requested. I know that there are 3 item agenda for the next meeting that are actually some additional information from the city. So they haven't even been asked that yet. If anyone else wants to talk on that. Time lapse, you'll see the time lapse of the fact that we didn't have a meeting in June because we had asked for a lot of information in the May meeting. And so the city had asked for 60 days to gather that information. And so therefore we did not meet in June.
The only thing maybe address on the separate subcommittee to review of the emails, we have yet to have our first committee meeting. There's been lots of emails back and forth to schedule a date, but that committee is yet to meet. And we just started getting emails, what, 2 weeks ago? I believe 3 weeks ago, maybe at tops. But that committee has not actually met yet today.
Councilmember McLean.
I just wanted to clarify, and again, for the benefit of people who didn't get this handout, it looks like your second committee meeting was on July 16th. So you met in May, and then the second meeting was July 16th. The following day, the letter was sent to the Dutch County Humane Society requesting these 8 items. It's quite detailed. And so to clarify, in response to those, the request for those 8 items, you received on August 21st, a letter saying that it's coming, or, you know, the stuff didn't get put together basically. So you don't really even have a time frame here of when that might be coming.
I don't at this current time, but we can certainly reach out and ask. They do know that we're meeting again on September 16th.
Yeah, I think it's really important. They've already now had almost 2 months to respond to that. That was a very detailed formal request on July 17th sent. I don't think it's at all in question what was requested. So it seems to me there is a holdup of information that we need to address. If that's not getting to the committee, you can't do all of the work that needs to be done. So,
and you know, when we meet on the 16th, you will see the 3 or 4 line items that still need to be resolved are really contingent back to complaints, concerns, and violations of information in that letter.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to clarify the dates for the public who didn't see this handout.
Good idea.
So it has been over a month. The response is rather vague about when this information will be forthcoming. So I do think we need to maybe press back on a date when they will commit to provide that information, or say they're not going to provide it, so that we're not in this limbo of waiting for information for another month or 2. I don't really know how to get it. Maybe legal.
There is a statute that allows the council to compel documents, that allows that compels people to come speak, but I haven't seen one that compels the production of documents. I'll try to look into it further, but we could try to get a member of the board to come speak, but I'd have to research that further.
Councilman Ellis.
Since the creation of this Citizens Advisory Board in May, actually it was created in April, and the first meeting was in May. I was a little frustrated. I too, as a Councilman Yerger, sat through all these meetings, whether it was on Zoom or in person. I was extremely frustrated in the 60 days that was given to produce some documents that I know that we had immediately available to you. And so it's just extremely frustrating the time that this has taken. This committee was created to go after one topic, to go after contract, a blatant, or not blatant, but just contract errors. And sitting in the meetings, I heard many examples of those contracts being broken, the contract being broken. So I kind of expected you guys to come tonight with at least what you found so far. And if you're telling me you haven't found anything yet, I sat in the audience listening to examples of how many dogs were euthanized by the vet. But when we get the reports back from the Humane Society, they say none. So that right there tells me that the numbers we're getting from the Humane Society is incorrect. And you guys knew that, so why wasn't that on the report tonight? There's certain items here that it's just extremely frustrating that what I'm seeing tonight is your ability to want to kick this can down the road even further. And I think that the people of Fremont are getting extremely frustrated with this Citizens Advisory Committee. And I think it's given it a black eye. So the next time we try to create a Citizens Advisory Committee, they're not going to want it. But this was meant for the citizens, for your group to go out, investigate, and come back to us quick. This was never meant to be a long-term Citizens Advisory Committee. Simply go after the facts and bring them back. And so whether it's the city that caused the delay, which I believe it was in the very beginning, now it appears to be the Dodge County Humane Society that's causing the delay. That's all we're seeing is delay, delay, delay. And I think it's time for us to start getting some answers and getting them quick. So I would encourage your advisory board to pull out all the stops and to get the information to us as quick as you can. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman Yerger?
There was reference in what you expressed to us that there is this executive committee, and I want to come back to that comment, I guess, relative to my statement that this council appointed 8 individual board members to serve on this board. They all have equal weight and authority. I'm curious as to whether or not there were expanded or specific roles of either taken or afforded by legal advice as to give more authority to some over others. And I'm hopeful that there are others in the room tonight that have opinion that we need to hear tonight to ensure that in fact progress is being made in this regard. I know specifically when the board was formed, there was 150 pages of documentation at that meeting included in the council packet that was starting material for your investigation. I don't know whether it's been utilized or not, but it was information that came to the council that we shared in the development of this board. And it contained quite a bit of information, much of which was disturbing and much of which went to the heart of are these contract matters. That would have, we didn't need to necessarily wait 45 days to receive additional material from the city attorney. with regards to the request made of law enforcement, but rather the investigation could have commenced immediately on those 150 pages of documentation. So I kind of share Councilman Ellis's concern over the time. I understand this is a volunteer organization. You volunteered to do the duty. You're not getting paid. And so I appreciate the efforts that are being put in to uncover the facts here. But the challenge was to look at the contract, state law, Fremont City Code, and determine whether or not the elements of the contract were being affected by the Dodge County Humane Society or they were not. And to make a determination of whether those things were in violation or not, and to bring back evidence they have been fulfilled or they have not been fulfilled. And I would just raise a couple of them that were in that packet originally and are in materials that I know you have. Do they do a budget? They're required to, by contract, give it to the city. Do they do financial assessment of what they spend for the dollars that we give them under our contract? They're required to. Do they follow their employment guidance with regards to hiring people and doing their federal and obligations under the contract for reporting? I don't know, but it's in the contract and they're required. So there are a lot of requirements that are, as I said earlier, in subsection 16 of the code provisions that are shall statements. And I'm interested in knowing whether those are being actively looked at by either of the subcommittees. And if not, why not? They need to find their way onto your agenda, I think, post haste, because they're fairly black and white. They're either being done or they're not. And so I encourage you in that regard. And again, I encourage anyone else from your board that's here tonight to speak if they're so inclined.
Scott, can I respond to a couple before it gets too far?
Yeah, I mean, you're at the podium to answer those questions.
You know, I guess, first of all, watching your city council meeting 2 weeks ago, you were advised that our committee was not going to be meeting prior to this meeting tonight. So I feel like you've almost set us up to fail, to now ask why you don't have a report in front of you when you knew our committee was not going to be meeting prior to tonight's meeting. Like Shannon stated, the committee is working on the contract, but she didn't feel it was fair to give you a report that committee had not signed off on. We sent out an email to the entire advisory committee asking them for input and to help pre-plan for this meeting tonight. And no one else responded to the email. So it's really hard to come and stand in front of you and act as a board or a committee when the committee is not working together. Asking for input would be really nice to share as an input as a group so we can come to you as a group. But you keep asking for individuals to stand up and give you a comment, which is great. I'm glad they can all comment, but it would also be nice for them to share information with the committee so we can work together moving forward for your sake and for our city's sake.
Any other comments? Thank you.
I'd like to submit a report for record.
Take a motion to receive. Councilmember Jacobus.
I make a motion to receive these documents.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Second.
Need a
You
second.
get a second. Okay. Councilman Ellis.
I second.
All right. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 5-1, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Trisha Hellman, and I'm a resident of Fremont who was asked to serve on a committee and report back any findings to the city council. In these next few pages, you will see what I believe to be breaches in the contract by Dodge County Humane Society between the city of Fremont and Dodge County Humane Society with regard to the animal control contract. The report I am about to provide is best presented using the flow of the contract. Do you want me to go through each? I can go through just the red and then you can do the exhibits on your own.
Typically have 4 minutes.
Okay, so each line talks about the contract and the breaches are in red. And then each part in red, I have supplied you with exhibits for each breach in the contract. It goes through to talk about the monthly statistic reports viewed all the way back to November 2014. Each report showed inconsistencies in numbers of animals coming and going from DCHS. Computer generated reports did not match up with numbers on the handwritten reports. Euthanasias are not listed with the reason for action, including intakes and disposition, as well as microchipping records. Advisory committee asked DCHS for records of euthanasias. That information was not provided. During the August advisory committee meeting, Arlington Pet Hospital, Dr. Grant Little appeared before us to speak on behalf of DCHS, and at that time was questioned as to how many animals did he estimate they had already euthanized for DCHS in 2020. He reported 5 or 6 euthanasias were done for DCHS in 2020, yet 0 have been listed on the monthly reports. In September 2014, PetPoint animal management software was implemented for record keeping and to track animals in the care of DCHS with extensive information to include a photograph of every stray or surrendered animal, which would be linked to the DCHS Facebook page, and this is no longer utilized. Next down on the contract, I'm just going to read the red. The breach of the contract is about a citizen called about possum in his backyard. They called DCHS to come and get it. They refused. Email from Chief Elliott confirming this. You have Exhibit 2C1. Citizens called DCHS on a dog complaint. She was told to call Fremont PD. Fremont PD in return made contact with DCHS to handle the call. And these are all exhibits that you will find in your packet. Moving down, breach of contract, March 2020, citizen contacted Fremont PD on a stray. Caller was informed that DCHS was not taking in strays. Email from Fremont PD in regards to cages being full, having to place more than 1 dog in a kennel. Dispatch was advised to get a hold of DCHS to identify the issue, could not get a hold of anyone. Same email included officer seeing dead kitten in litter box. Former employee witnessed cat needing vet care, but was not allowed to call vet for it. Cat kennel had blood splattered on sides. Anytime the cat sneezed or shook its head, you'll see Exhibit 2D number 2. Cat was placed in a cat room for adoption with roundworms, vaccinations being given and not entered right away. Animals being switched from not available to available without vaccinations or being microchipped. Animals turned away when space was available. 2 dogs and 1 cat. Tamar had claimed one of the dogs was too big and the other had too many needs. Employees were asked to stop posting animals on social media and to stop updating the website. You will see this in Exhibit 2D number 3. Former DCH employees had taken in a cat that had been adopted out from DCHS. Per policy, they need to take the cat back. The cat had an injury. Tamar denied the cat the surgery that was needed. Per Roerich Animal Hospital, the owner came in for, another owner had came in for his ashes of his dog, and he was given a random bag of ashes. Also, families have been denied adoption of animals for knowing past employees. December 2019, Chief Elliott's directive states that Fremont PD will be notified when an animal is received under the dog at large order and a ticket be written to the owner. On multiple occasions, Fremont PD has not been notified to include a dog that has been returned home all summer, and you'll be able to read the rest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to call point of order. We allowed Ms. Shanahan and Krausel to speak at will, and these are also equal members of the board, and as such, they are presenting as we have requested. And as being equal members, they should also have adequate time and not be limited to a public speaking time.
We asked questions at the beginning that took their time, and if we're gonna get through everyone that wants to speak, we're gonna have to move this along, so we'll keep it at 4 minutes. Yeah. Take a motion to receive. Councilman Legman,
I make a motion to receive.
is there a second? Councilmember Jacobus,
I'll second it.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 5-1, Mayor.
Go ahead.
My name is Danielle Platt, and I am from Fremont and a member of the Animal Control Citizens Advisory Board. And primarily what I did is I worked through some of the numbers on the information that was provided to us. During the period of January 18 through January 30, 2020, there were reports of 389 strays picked up by DCHS. The city has confirmed there have been no calls during this time that were received to provide significant marks or identification within 24 hours of impoundment. That is Exhibit A, number 8. DCHS is to provide a monthly report that includes euthanasia. I do not have the information from 2014 to 2017, but in 2018 they reported 2, 19, 2, 2020 they reported 0. Dr. Grant Little had reported there had been 5 in 2020. These do not show on the reports, nor does the other veterinary partner in that office. So we don't actually know if there were more euthanasias done by the veterinary clinic or not. We have not received quarterly financial progress reports that were to be provided to the city. DCHS did provide a budget for 2020. On that budget, it is not signed or dated, so I don't know when it came in. But what I did find was interesting. In 2014, the vet expenses were $36,000. 2019, $39,000. And based on the information I have through June, it looks like the veterinary expenses are going to be up toward $40,000. The wages in 2019 or 2014 were $67,000. In 2019, wages paid by DCHS were $131,000, and it looks as if it's going to be, so far in 2019, it's been, or 2020, if we multiply that from the first 6 months, we're going to have wages up over $155,000. In 2018, there were pet adoptions of 203. In 2019, 116. And in the first 6 months of 2020, it has been 70 pet adoptions. I question how the 2020 budget shows that they estimate taking a loss of $3,000, yet the 2020 financial report up to this date is showing a loss of over $40,000.
that's all great if they have the reserves to cover that loss, but there is something incredibly wrong with this budget. The 2020 that they had submitted shows that they would be receiving fundraiser funds of 65,000 to this date, or at least through June 30, they have received over 2,000. And that's it. That's a significant shortage. These documents I did not give to you, but they were provided to us as a council. 2020 is showing a net loss of 39,000. At the end of June, they're already over 40,000. So I'm not sure that they're going to be sustainable where they are now. If we have additional time, I would like to gather additional information, but some of it has not been provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Comments from council? Thank you. Quinn Eaton. You have the floor.
Hear me?
Go ahead, Quinn.
Are you able to hear me? Is that working? Yes, I thought I saw a head nod there. Okay, sorry about that. This is Quinn Eaton, also on the Animal Control Advisory Board. I just wanted to respond. Councilman Yerger had referenced, the original packet of information we were provided had a number of very specific incidents, very concerning allegations. And that's one of the items that one of the subcommittees that myself is on that was going to be focusing on. This particularly allegations regarding improper confiscation of animals, as well as a treatment of those animals once they were received by DCHS, and when and whether they were released back to their owners under proper circumstances or withheld from their owners. And now we didn't want to just go off the emails of allegations that had been included in that packet. And so one of the things that the subcommittee wanted to do is talk to the individuals who were involved in those circumstances, actually had firsthand knowledge, kind of expand on that information, get more details, and then be able to use that more detailed information to actually make a recommendation as to whether we consider that to be a breach of any of the various provisions of the contract. And now that subcommittee, it does look like we're going to be meeting hopefully later this week or early next week to set the schedule of who we want to talk to, and then be getting on that within the next few weeks. But I would say that, that goal itself has been a bit of a sticking point. There have been from the beginning repeated opposition by several members of this advisory board saying that that sort of action is outside the scope of what we're supposed to be doing in the first place, which, speaking for myself and a few others, is hard to believe when that formed the basis of much of what created our advisory board in the first place. And so I think that some clarification, some opinions by members of the council as to whether, something like that, obtaining more details from people who have knowledge of a couple of specific incidents, is something that the board wants us to be doing or not.
Thank you. Any other public comment or comment on Zoom? Councilmember Jacobus.
I appreciate everybody that came forward to speak tonight. I do have concerns because I'm listening to some of the past audio concerns of a few of the board members. For some reason, an executive committee was formed. I don't get it. You're all members. You all have the ability to put things on the agenda and talk about things. It was a very specific task given take a look at the contract, take a look at the code, take a look at state statute, what's in conflict, period. It wasn't to fix anything, it was merely to look at all the documents they had, which, again, you were inundated with a lot of pieces of paper. However, I'm not really sure what gave one benefit over the other. I decided it was on or off the agenda. My concern is that it started to go awry. I appreciate the committee members stepping up, and I know each and every one of you, whether you were chairing it, vice chairing it, members of the subcommittees that were created, whatever, have all taken some heat. And welcome to our rigor. That's kind of how we roll, I guess. I do appreciate the text you're going, but I would ask that you remain focused on where you were going to begin. It wasn't to solve the problems, the humane side, etc. It was to report back very specifically. Here's the contract, your city code, your state statute. Is everything followed, yes or no? Very simple. Every one of these things in here, is it by contract? Is it allowed by city code? Is it allowed by state statute? Is it yes or no? So again, I thank you for your time. And I know that it's not over yet, and you've got some more paperwork and other things to muddle through. Hopefully you can put together as a joint board without fracturing your board into subcommittees. Thank you.
Councilmember Layman.
I hate to say it, but I think I'm going to reiterate what Ms. Jacobus just said, that we need to work together. I don't know if the whole advisory council get this. So how are they supposed to say that if they don't even get it? First of all, I just want to thank you for volunteering to do this. And I know it's not going to be easy, and it isn't easy, but we just need to work. We need to work together too, so that they know what you're seeing and saying, and we can get both sides to see if we can agree on things. Hopefully we can get some more information, and that we get that information and we can both look at it and say, they broke the contract here, they broke it here, or they didn't break the contract here. Or we can give it back to Humane Society and say, here's what we think is broken, here's what you need to do to fix it, and see if we can work through this together. Again, thank you very much for volunteering to do this.
Councilman Yerger.
I too want to express my appreciation, just as the other council members have tonight. This is arduous work. There isn't any question about it. We asked you to do a task that's going to be daunting in many respects. In some cases, I think it's kind of black and white. I haven't heard anybody tonight mention it, maybe materials here, I don't know. But one of the things that started this process going, and it was in the packet material that we had when we formed this animal control board, was the issue around the dog named Bessie. That was Firestorm. This has been an issue for a long time, but nobody has mentioned Bessie's circumstance. And I'm kind of wondering why, because the material that was in that packet was pretty succinct. It included original adoption papers. The dog was supposed to have been spayed and wasn't. Apparently, because it went into heat later. It was told by a vet it still had its female parts. They ultimately readopted the dog out and said it had to be spayed in 30 days. State law says that humane societies must spay and neuter, or at least have a contract with the adoptee for a time specified to have that performed. And in Bessie's case, it doesn't seem like that occurred. I'm wondering if that was one of the investigatory cases. And if it wasn't high on the priority list, I'm kind of wondering why, because it started the firestorm in the first place. There may be plenty of other issues, obviously, that need to be addressed by the board, and you're obviously looking into them in your various committees to whatever extent you've gotten so far. I'm concerned about the timing of the material that you get to work with. I'm very concerned about that. Having come from the corporate world, when we got interrogatories at my firm, 5 days. That's what you got. Or you better have a really good reason for not having the material in front of your opposing parties. I don't know what the city is trying to enforce here on your behalf through city legal or not, but it ought to be days, not months, before you get information. And I would be hopeful that if in fact that persists, that you come back immediately to not only the city attorney, but you come back to council and seek help relative to the information that you think you can and should be able to get, because the contract does specify we're allowed to get some things. And if they're not doing that, that in and of itself is a breach. So I'm just concerned about the amount of timing that you have to spend. I'm concerned about the amount of time that we're going to have to spend and the public's going to have to spend on this issue. So I commend you again for doing what you've been doing. I encourage you to keep it up and get into the details. Make the findings based on what you see the contract specifies, state law specifies, city code specifies. They're either doing their work or they're not, and provide us the requisite evidence that shows that they are or they aren't. That's your task. And hopefully if we narrow it down to those things, there's far less speculation. You just look at those issues and make the determinations accordingly and report back. That's at least what I'm looking for. And so thank you for the material that you left with us tonight. I look forward to continued more detailed information. Thanks.
Councilmember McLean.
I just wanted to respond to, I believe maybe Councilmember Yerger, the answer to part of your question is item 6 in this July 17th request to the Dodge County Humane Society for any and all documents and communications regarding the dog named Bessie. So my guess is that we're looking for the other side of the story from the Dodge County Humane Society, and that has not yet been provided. I would like to maybe see, I don't know if it's possible for legal to send a follow-up letter to the law firm saying we need a date specific to receive these documents. I don't know if that would put a little more oomph behind the request. I don't know legality wise. I mean, I understand what you said earlier. We maybe can call them to a meeting, but maybe we can't force them to respond to a request for documents. I think we do need to move on. This is an arduous task. It's clear that there's a lot of different positions on the committee. It's hard when one side of the committee isn't working with another side of the committee, and perhaps, as has been mentioned earlier, we did set this group up for some failure. I feel badly about that. I think we all had good intentions and a hope that this would result in dialogue and one report. I would like to see the next time one report, not 3 reports. I understand everybody has an equal role in the committee, but it is the committee. And we do need a group effort, as hard as that may be sometimes. God knows it's hard sometimes. So I just ask you to, again, thank you for your time, effort, try to remain in a mode where we can work together and get this wrapped up as soon as possible.
Councilmember Ellis.
I just want to reiterate the sentiments that were done by many of the council members tonight. I appreciate all the work that's been put on forth on this. I think we've learned a lot about what a Citizens Advisory Committee should be in the future, based off the very first one that we've done. It is tough work, and but I think sometimes, like Councilman said, that we've set you up for failure because we've let this go on for so long. We've let the time 60 days where we should have gotten information in 5 days to you. So I believe that we're making progress in forming a better committee or citizens advisory boards in the future. But I would definitely, kind of what I was looking for tonight, Danielle kind of gave us is some information about what I've seen already at these meetings and just kind of summation. I appreciate Quinn's work in trying to get the full story via the emails. I understand that the emails are one-sided, but you need to have both sides or that kind. So it's going to take some time. But for us being, 3 or 4 or 5 months into this already, and we're just now doing the investigation of emails, that's kind of disheartening. So again, it's the time frame that it's taken us to get data to you. The emails it needs to be stepped up a little bit or a lot. And I hope that we can wrap this thing up within a month here. So thank you very much.
Any other comments? Thank you all. Oh, go ahead. Action. Okay, go ahead.
Julie Kepner, 1316 Watson Street. I just have a question on breach of contract. How many do you need? Are we supposed to go through the whole contract and say, this is a breach, this is a breach, this is a breach? Do you need one to break the contract? How many do you need to break the contract? They requested the copy of their federal immigration verification. We have not received that yet. And in the contract number 16 code provisions, they're supposed to make such records and accounts available for audit purposes to the financial director or any other authorized city representative at any time. Molly took our requests at our first meeting at the end of May, and some of these records we have not received from them yet. So that's a breach of contract. I mean, so how many do you need? 1, 5, 10. I want to know how many you need. How many breaches break the contract?
We can't answer you. So, I mean, by code, we can't answer you. So
tonight we've discussed at least 3 or 4. So I'm finding the Animal Control Advisory Committee almost a waste of my time. I work 7 hours a day at an elementary school and wear a mask. And then on a school night, I have to come here when we don't have all the information because we're not sharing it with everybody. So I have been printing off all my emails. I printed off all my requests for what needs to be put on the agenda. And our next meeting is Bessie, is one of them. Another one is Tamar Reed going on to somebody's personal property and taking a dog. If she would have come on my property, I would have called her. So do we need 5, 10, 1? You have to advise us somehow.
thank you. With that, we've had public comment. We've had council comment. If there's no other comments by council, we'll move on to item 15. Item 15, Resolution 2020-178 to renew and extend a 3-year insurance coverage commitment with the League Association of Risk Management, LARM, for the city's property and liability insurance coverage for its 2020-2021 renewal. This time we'll have staff report.
Jan Rise, Administrative Services Director. As the council is aware, with authorization of the city council, we did hire a independent consultant to prepare an RFP as well as to evaluate and make a recommendation regarding insurance renewal for coverages that currently are held with the League Association of Risk Management, and we refer to it as LARM. During that evaluation and process after bids were received on August 10th, when it comes down to the evaluation, we look at the summary of the coverages, the deductibles, various limits, and as well as the price. As you can see on the tabulation, the proposals were very similar, but terms, limits, and deductibles were different. And belonging to a pool has benefits to it, and those are highlighted in this summary that was prepared by Charles Worth. And it is recommended by Charles Worth and supported by staff that we renew our membership with the LARM pool, and we renew with a 3-year commitment, which then gives us a 5% discount. So our cost for the insurance would be down in 2021, 20 to 21, with a proposal of $370,659, and this amount is budgeted. I believe that we do have a representative of Charles Worth Consulting that may be available if you would like to have a general summary by James. Can you tell if he's online, Brian or Mayor?
Yes, he's online. Now he's got his hand up.
James, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. James Charlesworth Consulting, 1828 Walnut Street, Kansas City, Missouri. You've already had a long meeting, so I'll be brief. Jan's pretty much reviewed the summary. We were real pleased with the results. The LARM program has been very strong. The Gallagher option that was provided to us was a very good program, but there's really no cost difference. There's always risk to change. LARM's been a good partner for the city, even though we focused on coverages and conditions and price. There's also a lot of risk management services that are available to the city that are of a value. There's really not a whole lot to discuss. Obviously, I'm here tonight to answer any questions you might have, but in the sake of brevity, I will just wrap it up and answer any questions.
Thank you, James. Any questions for James or Jan? Any comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution 2020-178. Councilmember Jacobus.
I make a motion to adopt 2020-178.
Councilmember Yerger.
Second the motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 16. Resolution 2020-179. Approving Lottie Mitchell, Grant Coordinator, as authorized representative, and Jody Sanders, Director of Finance, Fiscal Officer, and authorization of the mayor to sign a financial commitment letter for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program Elevation Project. This time we'll have staff report. Lottie.
Mayor, City Council, Lottie Mitchell, Grant Coordinator. This is for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which will provide property owners reimburse property owners 75% of the cost to elevate their properties above the base flood elevation to help reduce the risk of damage and loss from future flooding events. In my staff report, I've tried to break down kind of a timeline as to where this grant project started and where we are at to date. This program became available to our community because of our presidentially declared disaster of the March 2019 flood event. We submitted a notice of interest to the state as local jurisdictions are the conduit to communities for this type of program. Individual homeowners are not able to apply on their own behalf. The city has to be the conduit for this program. So we went ahead and did that. Initially, we had 43 property owners signed up as interested in doing mitigation. JEO was hired as a consultant to help us with the pre-award application development. They did a lot of parcel assessments for us. They also had received a grant through Lower Platte North NRD for parcel assessment as well. So that kept our costs down on our application development. As this process went on, property owners, declined to continue participating, and we are now down to 2 participants. Both are in the floodway along the Platte River, along Big Island Road. But this program will provide them great benefit, 75% of the cost to elevate their properties and protect them from the loss of future flooding. What we need left for the application is to have an authorized representative and a fiscal officer and a financial commitment letter, which I included in your backup. We are requesting that myself as the grant coordinator be the authorized representative, Jody Sanders be the fiscal officer, and that the mayor be authorized to sign the financial commitment letter. The financial commitment to the city falls in the project management and application development cost. Right now it's estimated about $75,000 because there is an intense amount of work involved in this program to make sure we're meeting all of the FEMA and NEMA regulations and rules. This has not been an easy road, a smooth process by any means. And so with the amount of hours and time that has spent developing it and the amount of time and hours will be required to see it through to the end, estimated at $75,000. We will be reimbursed 75% of that. So our final fiscal impact will be approximately $18,750. So tonight is the final, yes, move forward. These are your final things you need for your grant. We understand the fiscal impact to the city. Let's move forward and provide protection for these homeowners.
Councilman Ellis.
Can you give us an idea of why we went from 43 down to 2?
Sure. There's kind of a bowl in Fremont in our floodplain, which is south of the tracks. Some properties had to elevate 10 to 12 feet.
12 feet.
Mm-hmm. And that they said, I'm not interested in doing that. And so it wasn't by any fault of the program. There were some property owners who dropped off because it did take so long to get to this point. But a lot of it was due to just the feasibility. 12 feet is very high and very expensive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Yerger.
I'm glad Councilman Ellis asked that question. That was one of mine. So thank you for the answer. Also, appreciate the thoroughness of your report. Pretty typical from you. So I find that really helpful to have that kind of information shared orally. So thank you for that. Looks like this is a project certainly worth moving forward. It's unfortunate that more people can't take advantage of it. The circumstances sounded, with that many originally, that would have been wonderful. But the fact that we can help anybody with this work is certainly something worth pursuing. And so I applaud you in doing that.
Any other comments? Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution 2020-179. Councilman Yerger.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-179.
Councilmember Jacobus.
I'll second the motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Thank you, Lottie. Item 17, resolution 2020-180, authorizing the city to issue a purchase order to Sourcewell for a Rosenbauer fire engine from Rosenbauer, Minnesota LLC. At this time, we'll have staff report. Chief Byrne.
Mayor, Council, Todd Byrne, Fire Chief. What you see in front of you is to purchase a Rosenbauer fire engine through Sourcewell. This will be to replace a 1995 E1 fire engine that we have right now. It's a reserve truck. This was approved in the budget for this next fiscal year. $550,000 was set aside. We are over budget by $20,733. Some of the things that we do when we spec a truck, we're always looking at firefighter safety. What can we do to make things safer for us? Some of the things that we added that I put in a staff report is a wireless remote controlled deck gun. The deck gun is you'll see it on the fire truck. It's right behind the cab on top. It's a big nozzle. We can actually get flows over 1,000 gallons per minute on that. And to operate it manually, you got to put a firefighter on top to operate that manually. So if we can keep firefighters off the truck and preventing them from falling, preventing any injury, I think it's well worth it. Another thing is seeing lighting at night is a big issue. We have some portable lights, but they don't really light the scene up like we like. They're actually coming out with fire trucks that put a big command light on top of the cab. It folds up and it actually would light up basically a whole block. And the only truck that we have now is our heavy rescue. So if we need that type of lighting, we got to have other crews to bring that truck to light it up. So this would actually work at night scenes for fires, motor vehicle accidents, or any type of scene like that. Estimated delivery is 440 days, so that'll put it into probably around November, December of 2021. So this will actually go 2 budget years. Once this would get ordered, once you approve it, the chassis would be built. Once the chassis is built and delivered to the factory, and if we actually make a payment on that, we can actually deduct $9,100 from the overall price instead of waiting until the truck is actually delivered and pay at that time. To make up that difference of the $20,733 next year, when we sit down at the budget, start going over the budget for the next 2-year budget, we can actually make the appropriations to cover those costs at that time. That's all I have. If you have any questions or
Any questions for the chief? Thank you. Councilmember Jacobus.
I would assume that you have a large hose bed on there.
Yes.
And as far as the room, I noticed that the doors are the 85-degree doors, which will be a huge benefit for you guys to get manned in and out of the cab. Is it a larger back cab area, so when the packs are on?
I actually have one of our truck committee guys here. He can answer some of that questions because I think the cab is pretty much about standard what we got.
I just know some of the cabs as of late have expanded some of the room just because of having to run the air packs and be geared up by the time you hit the scene. And I noticed that you have the 85-degree doors open in there right in the standard on some other models like from South Dakota trucks. So I thought that was a good thing to have on there anyway. I was just curious about the hose bed, if this is going to have a larger hose bed for you in the LDH lines.
Alan Atkinson, I don't know if you want my address, 2476 Deerfield.
Thank you.
I'm with the fire department. I was kind of the chairman of the truck committee. The hose bed, as far as it's roughly about the same size. We specify how much hose it has to carry. One of the things that we try to do is get it as low as possible for loading and unloading. Like the chief said, we're trying to protect our members from falls, back injuries, stuff like that. So anything that we can do to try and get those firefighters down off the top of the truck when loading or fighting a fire, we're looking at that now. One of the things we did was we lowered our cross slays, our hose lines that we pull out for fires, and also our ladder storage. We try to keep lower so you don't have to climb up on the truck or use an automatic ladder off the side. So we're trying to do some things to try and keep those firefighters off the truck and protect them.
Will this pumper also have a draft system?
Yes, it'll be able to draft. All the trucks come that way. Some of the other things that we specified, or we would like to have specified that we didn't get in this budget, and hopefully next time, we're trying to get an air system that actually takes the cancer-causing carcinogens out of the cab after a fire.
And a filtration system.
Yes.
And a big push for NFPA and some of the IAFS has been stressing that.
That was about a $25,000 ticket that we actually cut out of this truck to try and get us within a budget. Any other questions, Chief or I will?
Pretty much covered it, but I was just curious, and you brought up the air system, but I've been watching some of the NFPA regs that they were changing. That's going to be mandated in the near future.
Yeah. And like Alan said, our hose beds are quite high, so we wanted to lower them down, try to keep them close to the ground so guys aren't on the truck as much. And we put a lot of lighting in the hose bed, so at nighttime operations, when people are loading hose back up, they have light in that area. As compared now, there's really very limited lighting.
Is it a all those trucks? Thank you both.
Councilman Bechtel.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys. I spent a little bit of time as a volunteer firefighter. My experience is very limited. I was usually the guy that was putting the hose away or clearing debris, so very heroic. I don't know how many lives I saved doing that. But I did want to say that I appreciate what you did. I know that you came in kind of low with how much you wanted to spend, and I understand that you're trying to be a responsible steward with that. I get the panic since the start realizing your budget, but with it being $20,000, I think safety is one of the few things that people are happy in the government when government entities spend on that. And hopefully, with the additions that we have to do, that $20,000 will more than pay for itself and property saved and lives saved ultimately. So thank you guys.
Councilman Yerger.
My question is not really about the equipment per se. I'm sure you have experts and you're designing what you need for efficient and safe handling of fires. And certainly we want our firefighters to be equipped appropriately. My question really goes to this discussion about again, over budget, or multiple budget cycles. Maybe this is more of a question for Jody than it is for you, but I just want to get it clear in my mind. So at this juncture, we're not going to complete the purchase of this until 2022.
That'd be November.
That's when you'll take possession. Is it 2022?
It'd be in the next 2-year budget.
Okay, but we need to approve in this resolution the entire expenditure of $570, even though you get a discount for partial payment to the tune of $238,000 when they start building the item for you. You need to have authorization for payment in full.
Yes.
Even though that's 2 years out.
Yes.
And will be discussed at some future date when we're discussing budgets for that time frame as to how we'll have that fully funded, even though we have pre-approved. That's what we're dealing with here? Pre-approval of something we're yet to be.
Basically, we're pre-approving the 570, even though we're budget over 20,000. Next year, when we go over the next 2-year budget, maybe have discussions of adding the appropriations of 20,733 to the engine at that time. So when we take delivery, it'd be fully covered.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments from the public? Comments from council? Councilmember Childress?
I don't have a comment. I'll just make a motion to approve the resolution 2021-80.
Take that. Councilmember Bechtel? Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Thank you, guys.
You.
Item 18. Motion to approve amendments to the Articles of Incorporation and bylaws of the League of Municipalities by voting for proposed actions 1, 2, and 3 on the attached regular member ballot, authorizing the mayor to sign the regular member ballot and return both pages of the regular member ballot to the league by no later than 5 p.m. October 1st, 2020. Is there a staff report on this item?
Mayor and Council, this item is from the League of Municipalities. They have requested municipalities to take action on this. There's actually, you can do it all in one action or take 3 separate actions. But ultimately what they're asking to do is to be able to have their business meeting for their board and be able to do that remotely. And so by receiving, I believe, from 20 communities action on this, that will enable them to do that at their board meetings for the annual meeting. So they've requested that this be done. Obviously, it's due to COVID situation. Recommendation is to allow them to do this.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Jacobus?
I don't have a question, but I heard maybe half what you said because we had this wonderful plexiglass last week and had to come over the speakers. I apologize. I didn't catch half. If you could repeat some of that a little louder.
I've got my mic on now, so hopefully you can hear me better. So there's 3 items here that you can either take separate action on or take action on them all together. Ultimately, what the League of Municipalities asked is that the city council take action to change their bylaws to allow them to have remote participation for their board meeting at the upcoming annual meeting. The 3 items are to vote on the articles of incorporation and bylaws and the proposed actions, authorize the mayor to sign the ballot, and then return that ballot. Those would be the 3 steps that we're asking for.
Any other questions for staff? Councilman Yerger?
It looks like these amendments or changes are permanent, not tied to COVID or any limited amount of time frame. These are permanent changes to the function. Is that correct, Brady?
I think that would be correct. Just my personal opinion on all of these things. I mean, we're all adopting different types of technology. Some of it's working, some of it's not working. It might be something that they want to continue to do in the future. They may find that it's something that they want to revert back on and ask us for another ballot to make the change again in the future. But my reading didn't say anything about it reverting back at any point.
Any other questions for staff? Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion to approve the amendments of the Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws of the League of Nebraska Municipalities by voting for proposed actions 1, 2, and 3 on the regular member ballot, authorizing the mayor to sign the regular member ballot and return both pages of the regular member ballot to the league no later than 5 p.m. October 1st. Councilmember Jacobus.
I make a motion to approve just what you said. Don't ask me to repeat it.
Councilmember Lakeman.
And I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 19, Resolution 2020-181 to approve the placement of a subdivision monument sign at the entrance to Sunridge subdivision at Military Avenue and Sunridge. At this time, we'll have staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Dave Godigan, Director of Public Works. This was a request by the developer of Sunridge Edition to put a monument sign or entrance sign or development name sign at the entrance of Sunridge subdivision. They have provided all the requirements by city code. They did provide an insurance certificate. They provided a letter of agreement for maintenance. They provided plans and drawings. They have been reviewed, and staff is recommending this request be approved.
Any questions for staff? Any comments from the public? Comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
Make a motion to approve the subdivision monument sign resolution 2021.
Second. Councilmember Lakeman.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 20, receive traffic committee. Receive traffic committee report for August 2020. This time we'll have staff report.
Again, Dave Godigan, Director of Public Works. This item is the August Traffic Committee report, which you have in your packet. There were several items on this agenda, and I will go through each item individually. Item number 1 was a request for two 2-hour parking signs in the vicinity of 2235 and 239 West 6th Street. This request was from a business that resides in that area, and it was in for consideration of their elderly customers so that they could have parking in front of their business, and these patrons wouldn't have to walk so far to use that business. The committee looked at the request, and by consideration that we have other limited hour parking stalls within the downtown area, we are recommending approval of this item. This item will also require a resolution of the City Council. Item number 2 was a request that this came from in the form of a petition from property owners on First Street between Bell and Luther Road. It was for the committee or the city to consider reducing the speed limit, reducing or eliminating truck traffic, and placement of speed tables or speed bumps in this area. The committee did go out, and staff has placed traffic counters, which also monitor the speeds and then distinguish types of vehicles that are using the road. And the city also had police presence, so police patrolled that area. And what we found was there's really no evidence of excessive speeding in this area. The speed limit on this particular street, which is listed as a collector street on our functional use map, it's 30 miles an hour. The average speed or 85 percentile was 31, 32 miles per hour, which falls within limitations as recommended by the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices and within state law and state Department of Roads recommendations. Numbers of trucks within a week were about 30. When I say trucks, I mean semis, 5-axle trucks, 18-wheelers. And so the committee, in the absence of evidence of speeding, because the police monitored it, they weren't finding excessive amounts of speeders. We did agree that we were going to mount no truck traffic or no truck signs on either end of First Street, one at Luther Road, one at Bell Street. And so the committee on this one, the request also then came in, well, maybe we didn't hit it through this while school is in session. So we have placed out counters again now that school is in session. The police were going to do more monitoring in the area, and the recommendation at this particular meeting was extend this on to the September meeting and not make any action other than the no truck signs at this time. And then after the September meeting, then we would again visit the issue. Item number 3 was a request for a speed bump ahead sign in the vicinity of 12th Street and Luther Road. And in reality, it really wasn't a speed bump. What it was a heave that was caused by heat in the pavement, pushed the panels up. So we placed a warning sign there, and then the street department put this on their list for maintenance to get that fixed because it was a road failure. It's really not a sign issue, but it came in as a sign request, so we acted accordingly. 4th item was a request for a left turn head on the traffic signal at the intersection of Lincoln and 23rd Street. There have been accidents in this area due to turning traffic. The committee does agree that there is an issue there. The police have had reports of, or not reports, have had accidents there that they've responded to. In this particular case, the committee recommends that the city hire a traffic engineer to look at that particular intersection and make recommendations regarding left turn signal heads. The fifth item was a request for no parking signs on the south side of Jackson Street at between H and Broad. This was an item that was carried over from the July meeting. And we went out, we looked at it. There were multiple cars parked there during the day, and there's cars parked on both sides of the street, and it's difficult for trucks to get through that segment when you've got cars parked on either side, and it does slow traffic down. So we continued that to the next month so we could go out and do traffic counts. Again, they would pick up numbers of large vehicles. And then also we sent letters to the abutting property owners letting them know what the city was considering. The one response we did get back was positive as far as placing the signs. So this committee is recommending that these signs be placed. That also will require action as a resolution by the city council. The sixth item was for the intersection of Summers Avenue and 23rd Street. This intersection is controlled by a traffic signal, but the traffic signal goes on flash in the evening and is on flash all night. And there were concerns from some of the neighbors that there are hedges on the northeast corner of that intersection that do impair visibility. As if you're going south on Summers on the north side of 23rd Street and you're trying to turn or even go through the intersection, it is difficult to see traffic coming from the east. The committee recommends not necessarily removing the hedges, but working with, it's the cemetery, working with the cemetery maintenance crews as far as making sure that those hedges are trimmed back so that we can reduce the restrictions in view there. Seventh item was actually the item that was just considered previous to this council item. It was the request for the entrance sign on Sunridge Edition. And as we stated before, the committee was recommending placement of that sign. And that's the end of my report.
Questions for staff? Councilman Yerger?
I just have a few. You know, the first one that had the 2-hour parking restrictions on 6th Street, for example. Yes. I'm just curious as to whether other businesses in that area were noticed as well as the one requesting it, and whether or not there were any objections posted from any of the other businesses.
We did not contact other businesses, but the intent would be to just limit the signs into that, like 2 stalls in front of that particular business. We did something similar last year, the year before, in front of the credit union on D Street. And it was the same thing. It was with other cars parking there, it's difficult for their customers to park in front of their particular business.
Okay, I didn't understand that it was limited to 2 parking stalls. So
yeah, it would be a very short area there.
My other comments get to the item number 2, which is in my ward. Mm-hmm. And I'm aware of the petition. I have a copy of it as well.
Yes.
And so there are a few observations that I guess I'd like to share with you and ask that you take into consideration as you reinvestigate, if you will, the amount of speeding. I walk in that area on a daily basis. I know law enforcement was there. I know law enforcement mostly wasn't there during the peak times of speeding complaint. That is from 7 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock, and from 3:30 in the afternoon until 7 or so in the evening. That's when the speeding is most prevalent. A lot of that probably is school commute traffic, but some of it is not. Some of it is not semi-truck traffic. It's other heavy truck traffic, and I'll cite several examples because I observed them myself. Cement trucks are some of the worst offenders. They have their own speed tracking gun, and they are measuring speed themselves that I know about. I'm asking for your data perhaps to be scrubbed somewhat, if you can screen it down, when you say, well, it's only 85% of the time they're not speeding. What if you scrubbed your data down to only look at between 7 and 9 a.m. in the morning and 3:30 and 7 p.m. and based your statistics on how many speeders do you have in those time slots? because my guess is you're going to find a much higher percentage than you do if you take the entire day. I don't know if that's how you're doing your statistics or not, but I know from visiting with them, their major complaints are in those time slots. And even though law enforcement's been there, they haven't always been there during those times. And so you don't catch those that are doing it on a regular basis. Here's something else that wasn't in their petition, and okay, maybe it kind of was, but I've observed this twice in the last 3 weeks. It's of real concern to me is student safety. The walking light for Howard School is not on Howard Street intersection. It is to the east of that intersection. I have watched 2 near misses of children crossing that had pushed the button. Thank goodness they didn't walk when it said you could, or they'd probably be dead because the traffic did not stop eastbound where that light came on because they're not used to it. Either they couldn't see it for the sun, or they're just not used to it and they don't stop. And it's the speed coupled with those safety concerns that the residents are really struggling with is to how do we get in and out of our driveways? How do students cross that street? Even though there's a light, traffic doesn't stop for them. We need to do something before somebody gets injured in that regard. So perhaps maybe your recount could tailor the amount of speeding. I'd be interested in knowing how many speeding citations law enforcement issued while they were there, because I have seen them out there several times. I know Chief Elliott has sent his officers there to patrol, and I've talked to them. So I know that that's occurring. But I am concerned that when we measure the amount of speed going on, that we measure the right time frames. And that's what they've told me themselves. And that's why they've been monitoring it themselves. They're creating a list for the time frames. I'd like to see that matched up against your counter.
Well, I can check our traffic counters because we had them out for 2 7-day periods. I know we can narrow it down to a day. I will check and see if we can't narrow it down to a time period during the day. Because it gives you an analysis of how many axles or how many axles each vehicle has. And then it also tells you speed and number of speeders and our number of vehicles within that. It goes like 21, 25, 26 to 30, et cetera. And it will tell you how many are within that period. So I will see if we can narrow it down to
And just as another point of reference, 16th Street, for example, is also considered a collector street, just like First Street. Is that correct?
I believe it is, yes.
And it probably has school traffic as well. Part of the problem with First Street is it does collect a lot of school traffic because everybody is going out to the school, et cetera. So in those hours that I quoted for you, those are peak hours of travel. 16th Street may have some of that, but it's also a collector with a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Do they have the same amount of speeders on 16th Street as we might be experiencing on First?
I don't remember the last time we did a traffic study up there or traffic count. I mean, we certainly could put some up there, but don't fall in the trap though, because every street is a little different. I mean, between Luther and Bell, I don't believe there's any stop signs along there.
You need to wrap up your time in the first 5 minutes. You're going to have more than 5, but.
Councilman Ellis? Curious on the 2-hour parking, do we actually enforce that?
We don't proactively go out and enforce it. It's only by complaint basis.
Councilmember Jacobus.
To expand a little bit on Mr. Ura's comment at 16th Street, there's 2 4-way stop signs between Lincoln and Bell Street on 16th. There's nothing. And traffic pays out to get onto the street from the block that's feeling to the east. However, Lincoln has a fair amount of speeders. I mean, we have that issue at different times of the day. But I have seen some near misses and kids on bicycles on First Street and also on 16th. And I've stopped and helped a couple little kids. I mean, anybody that's under the age of 20 is a kid to me. That had to come to a halt and went head over heels on a bike because somebody ignored the light at the crosswalk. So I'm just saying that's an issue of concern. It's been there during the summer. It's also an issue of concern now. Is there anything we can do on First Street when they have the light in between or Howard to warn them that there's a traffic light ahead to be stopped, maybe during school time, a flashlight, something to get that driver's attention. Because I see drivers not slowing down and the kids have a crosswalk.
We can take a look at that and consider options.
Any other comments, comments from the public? Comments from council? So there's Councilman Euler.
I just had a couple other questions for your consideration as you continue to evaluate this item. It looked to me like 16th Street, where I was going with our discussion, until you get beyond Garden City Road, is only 25 miles an hour, yet First Street is 30 miles an hour all the way through. Also in city code, it cites that around Grant School and Howard School, the speed limit is supposed to be lowered to 25 miles an hour currently by city code. I don't see that posted, so I expect that it's not being enforced. There's at least a block there around Grant Street and a block around Howard Street where the speed limit is supposed to be dropped. It's not posted as school zone. It's not posted as 25 mile an hour, to my knowledge. And if you post for truck traffic, what kind of power or weight are you going to put on the truck traffic that can use that street? The complaint wasn't just for semis. It was for other heavy trucks, as I indicated earlier. And some of those trucks are the biggest culprits with regards to speeding, and they don't stop on a dime. So I just ask you to take all of that into account, and I'm sure your traffic counters will take some of that into account. But if you apply special effort in that regard, it would help the citizenry. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
So I think what we want to do is take a motion to approve just the two resolutions, correct? Or do we need to approve the traffic report? Okay, let's take a motion to receive the traffic committee report of August 2020. Councilman Yerger?
Make a motion to receive the report.
Councilmember McLean?
I will second that.
Item A is resolution 2020-182, authorizing the placement. Okay.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item A is resolution 2021-182, authorizing placement of 2-hour parking zone sign at 235 and 239 West 6th Street. This has been discussed. I would take a motion in regards to this resolution. Councilmember Jacobus.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2020-182.
Councilmember Leaman.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Next item is B, resolution 2020-183, authorizing placement of a no parking zone sign on the south side of Jackson Street between 8th Street and Broad. This time, this has been discussed as well. I would take a motion in regards to this resolution. Councilman Leaman.
I make a motion to approve 2020-183.
Councilmember Jacobus.
And I'll second the motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Next item is 21, resolution 2020-184, calling for the closing of the railroad crossing located at Hills Farm Road, Burlington Northern, Santa Fe Crossing Railroad, mile post 27.9, authorizing the mayor to sign highway rail grade crossing agreement. This time we'll have staff report.
Dave Godikin, Director of Public Works. This item is part of the Southeast Beltway project. We are putting an overpass over the Burlington Railroad tracks in the vicinity of Hills Farm Road. Whenever that happens and the railroad participates in the expense of these projects, one of the requirements is that we close a at-grade crossing. In this case, the at-grade crossing will be closed regardless because the new Beltway project sits almost on top of this intersection. It's slightly north of there. So this agreement is between us and the Burlington Northern. It came at the request of the Department of Transportation, and it's an agreement that we are in concurrence that grade crossing can be closed. The Department of Roads will build the turnaround, and they will build the road infrastructure because there'll be a cul-de-sac on Hills Farm Road. There'll be a cul-de-sac on Platte Avenue. And the Department of Roads will do that as part of the Beltway project. And the Burlington Northern will go in and they will remove the at-grade crossing apparatus, basically the crossing grates that as you go across the tracks. They will do that, and they will put up the barricading at the end of the street as well. Staff is recommending this agreement be approved.
Any questions for staff? Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution, Councilman Yerger.
Just going to make the motion that you're going to be asking for approval of resolution
See it, and I did.
2020-184.
So, resolution 2020-184. And we do have a motion. So, Councilman Lakeman, second.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 22, ordinance 5543 to vacate Studley Road right-of-way from the east right-of-way line Platte Avenue to the right-of-way line of Yeager Road. Consider request to suspend rules and hold on final reading. This time we'll have staff report.
Dave Godikin, Director of Public Works. This request was from Holstone Farms. It was discovered in the process of a permit application that they made to expand their business that they had a setback issue with Studley Road. Studley Road is, in all intents and purposes, been vacated and closed for years. This road was formerly a county road. It's been brought into the city with the recent annexation of that area. But what we discovered was the road had never been vacated. On the east end on Yeager Road, there's actually a gate across there that's closed, other than when, their operational hours are for having that open. On the west end, the roadway has been removed and there was a parking lot built. So for all intents and purposes, the road's been closed for quite some years. This is kind of a formality of following through, vacating it. I believe there were easements in the past, but to get past the setback issues, and since it's not required for any transportation purposes for the city, we are recommending that the road be vacated. There are utilities in there, but by state law, we do retain the easements for those utilities that are in there.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Jacobus?
There's parcels immediately to the south of Studley Road, and I see where one of them is a parking lot in Marshall. Is that all owned by Holstone? Because there's a lot, 1, 2, and 3 that's noted there. And let's see, gotta look at my map a little bit. Immediately to the east of this, there's Hamilton Street. Is there any businesses now or in the future that would be somehow cut off from emergency service, whether it's fire, police, or ambulance, or any property that would be suddenly landlocked, even though it isn't purchased now or developed now, that this could create an issue for it? Because once we give up a road, we can't get it back. And I see where there's on the drawing or the aerial view that you gave in your report, there are lots 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 that are built on. And this is on page 242 of our agenda. I just wondered, where does the access go to those inside? Because you can't legally landlock property. Who owns those properties?
It's my understanding that's all owned by Holstone Farms. It's all within their fenced-in campus. So if they were to sell those to another property, now they do have access onto Cloverleaf. However, they would, when you sell a piece of property, if there's no access to it, you have to provide access at the time of the sale.
There's Highway 275 to the far east going at a diagonal. And then there's some structures in between on the east side of Hamilton Street. What are those businesses? Because I don't see where you could have access on Highway 275 or Hamilton Street for those businesses. Or would we cut them off? Would we give more access?
No.
Should an emergency arise?
No, the access off Old 275 is all closed off because the railroad tracks are in there. So there's no access across the tracks. At one time there was, but I don't know how many years ago that was, but that was all closed off or vacated, similar to what we just did with Hills Farm Road. That crossing was closed. So the access into those properties is up Yeager Road, and that comes into like where the transfer station is there, and then kind of that loading area that Holstone Farms has. And Hamilton Street is in there. Part of Hamilton is improved. Part of Hamilton is just unimproved as well. So if it were ever to develop along Hamilton Street, which is still an active street, there could be a street placed on there.
Could you find out before this goes through the 3 readings, who owns that property specifically, so there we're not somehow inadvertently creating a landlocked
The properties to the south?
properties immediately to the south?
Well, I believe those are all owned by Holstone Farms.
You said you weren't sure. I was just going on what your response was.
Everything within the fence line is Hormel, all Holstone. Everything down that whole acreage. That used to be the corn cob plant, which I don't know if you would know, but that was there. And we, as a city, spent millions to clean it up. And then we dedicated that land to Hormel. And at the time, so the city did that piece. At that same time, 275 got closed. Hamilton takes care of all of our access to the transfer station, Wickham Pig. There's some property that's just to the east of the fenced-in area that's all Holstone Farms, which used to have been Hormel's. And if you go there, it's all posted Hormel, or it used to be Hormel. Stay off private property all around the fencing there. So that's the property, and truly, this is, the county never did it. And then when we annexed it, now becomes our job to clean it up, and that's what we're doing. So that, and there's a parking lot over the west side of it.
Yes.
So it hasn't been a street for at least 10 years, if not 12. It's just the history of it, but it used to be, it's a lot more beautiful now than what it was.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion to introduce and hold first reading of ordinance 5543 to vacate Studley Road right of way. Councilman Levan.
I make a motion to hold first reading of ordinance 5543.
Councilmember McLean.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Now we'll have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, vacating Studley Road from the east right-of-way line of Platte Avenue to the west right-of-way line of Yeager Road in the city of Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska, providing for reservation of rights associated with public utilities, providing for severability and bringing effective date on first reading.
There's been a request to suspend rules and hold final reading. I would take a motion to that effect. Hold third reading. Councilmember Jacobus?
I had a question. Why are they asking to forego a 3 reading on something like this? What's the urgency at this point?
I understand that they're having some issues with their building permits as far as the setbacks from the right of way. And what they want to build is too close to Studley Road. Like I say, that's when we realized that Studley Road had in fact not been vacated. There was an easement across it, but this just kind of cleaning up that whole situation.
So if we don't,
Go ahead, Susan.
so if we don't go ahead and pass this on 3, we'll further hold them up and we're trying to do and they have stuck with these setbacks.
Yes, essentially.
This one might make sense. Thank you. I would make the motion to forego the 3 reading.
Councilman Legman?
But I will second that then.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Now we'll hold the third reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, vacating Studley Road from the east right-of-way line of Platte Avenue to the west right-of-way line of Yeager Road in the city of Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska, providing for reservation of rights associated with public utilities, providing for severability and providing an effective date on final.
Ready? Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 23, I would take a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Jacobus?
I move to adjourn.
Councilmember Legman?
I second.
Cast your votes.
Second, Councilmember Ellis didn't register your vote.
Councilor Miller?
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Meeting adjourned. Time is 10:28 p.m.
Sorry about that.